Welcome to the deep dive. We hope all of you had a very Merry Christmas. Ian, we've got some presents post Christmas. Is there some holiday tradition that you open presents after Christmas Day? What's Boxing Day?
Isn't that where you clean up? Is that where you clean up the boxes? I don't know what Boxing Day is.
I'm ignorant. In my family, we had a tradition: you could open one present on Christmas Eve, and then you had to wait till Christmas morning.
Yeah.
Which we sped by waking our parents up at 6 a.m. and asking if it was morning yet.
I'm still trying to nail down the negotiation. I was like, "What do you think, Dad? What time should Christmas start?" And I said 8. And of course, just negotiated to 7.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe next year I'll say like 9 or 10. We'll see. I'm not
all the more reason to give your kids Benadryl. All right, Ian, let's talk about something. It's not going to be Benadryl when it comes to this bowl matchup, but the Peach Bowl. It's a playoff game, more importantly, between Texas and Arizona State. We want to take apart a couple of parts of the Arizona State offense and defense. But before we do that, we want you to make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, smash that like button. You're supposed to say smash the like button because it creates more action in the mind of our viewers. Also, if you're not a member of Inside Texas, come join. It's where the best conversation about Texas sports is happening and all sorts of other conversations as well. So, Ian, are you ready to talk about Cam Skattebo and the Arizona State Sun Devil run game?
Yeah, that's about as close as I can get to being afraid of this game for Texas. It's talking about Skattebo.
Envisioning Cam Skattebo putting the team on his back and killing us, catching screens and running GT counter.
Yeah, but even like you say it, and I'm like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'll say one thing that's interesting that separates high school from college from the NFL is the degree to which running back can still dominate a high school game where he's the best player on the field. Your team might be outmatched, but you've got the best player on the field in your running back, and he can just take over. College, much less so than it used to be. And then I think the NFL, you could have a great running back, and it's a marginal advantage over your opponent if that opponent is a peer or even slightly better. I kind of feel like it's very difficult for even a dominant running back to take over a game when man for man, Texas has the better team.
Yeah, I think the only time you really see it now is when the team already has really good players up front. And then 2014 Alabama, 2015 Alabama with Derrick Henry, whichever that team was.
Or Ohio State with Zeke Elliott.
Probably even a better example.
Yeah.
But even those two teams had like the deep threat dimension, and it wasn't really the only team I've seen dominate in the modern era of college football was last year's Michigan team. And they didn't really dominate. It was good enough.
Yeah, and unfortunately for the Sun Devils, they lost their deep threat, Jordan Tyson, who is a guy that created a lot of room and space and respect from defenses. He's out with a shoulder injury. He's not going to play, and he is their passing game. So that's why we're hyper-focusing on this run game. Cam Skattebo is the man. That's not the only way he gets his yards. He's also very active in the receiving game. He's their number 2 receiver. He's great on screens. But we're going to focus on the run here, Ian, because Arizona State has a very clever and peculiar sort of approach to the run game. And I mean peculiar in the best possible way. So let's break it down. Take a swing at it, and I'll see if I can chime in as well.
I think one of the most interesting things I've seen them do, Mr. Producer, if we can get that GT counter, either the GIF or the diagram. So they ran this against Iowa State. And it's GT counter, so the guard and the tackle from the left side are pulling over to the right side. Normally when teams run GT counter, they run it away from the tight end, so the tight end can block the backside edge. And what Arizona State did was they would have the quarterback read that. And if somebody chased down the line to get Skattebo, he would just pull the ball and run around the edge. But that meant that over to the side that they're pulling their blockers, the tight end is now like a free guy, and he was like, you can block down, you could send him after a safety. It really starts to, you get a lot of numbers at the point of attack, especially for a spread run game. That part is unique. The other thing is that this was probably, they did this so that the quarterback could read the backside end for a keeper, but they had Skattebo run to the backside to get the ball out of the pistol and then jump cut back over to where he was supposed to go. And the upshot of that was that if we could get the GIF, yeah, this is it. Iowa State actually got penetration that should have doomed GT counter.
Yes.
But the pulling linemen just kind of cleaned up what they found, and Skattebo got the ball late after the blocks had already developed. Is when he actually got the ball to go play side behind the pullers.
Well, and so here's an important thing, and it's hilarious. We both simultaneously mentioned it independently, which tells me that we're thinking the same way. This approach to O-line blocking, very similar to what we saw with Wyoming last year, which is if someone is hell-bent on penetrating and they're physically superior to you, which Alfred Collins will be to every Arizona State offensive lineman, invite the penetration and seal him off. Cam will clean it up. And that was the whole approach that Wyoming had when they popped that big run on us last year, if you'll recall, with Harrison Whaley. The idea was, hey, if a physically superior guy wants that badly to get up the field, you're almost trapping him and just sealing him off, and you're letting Cam Skattebo clean it. Most running backs aren't good enough to do that. They're not good enough to have that recognition and make that cut. And also, Cam Skattebo, if you try to arm tackle that guy, if you reach out a hand as he goes by, like, you're just going to lose all your fingernails. That's what's going to happen to you. Like, he shrugs off that. Another thing I noticed, they almost exclusively run the ball from 11 personnel.
Yeah.
One running back, one tight end. And a lot of teams, Ian, you'll notice when teams crowd the box, they'll either just throw or they'll get big. They'll go 12 personnel, or they'll start to like, oh, we got to account for their extra man. Arizona State goes, no, this is great. This means Cam has a higher likelihood against a loaded box of breaking a long run if we block it right, play side. Additionally, there's always going to be an extra man. And aside from the Sam Levitt read that you mentioned, or having Cam Skattebo start one way, jump cut the other, and then slice hard, what they'll also do is say, hey, Cam, there's going to be an extra guy on the line of scrimmage. We're going to make sure it's an edge from the backside or a linebacker. Just run through his tackle. And what we're going to do, instead of dedicating someone, is we're going to release downfield, and we're not going to double at the point of attack. We are going to just get our guys down the field interfering with linebackers and safeties, because we think that's our most likely scenario of popping a big run and getting you in space. And I'll tell you what, it works really damn well for Arizona State. The problem that they may have is scaling to competition, because the Big 12 is down. And I don't just mean because Texas and OU left. I mean, the Big 12 is down globally, particularly in D-line talent. And so I don't know if that they were ever punished sufficiently for some of that approach with their offensive line. And as much as we think highly of Cam Skattebo, and I think he's the equivalent of Ashton Jonty, I think he's just as good. And Jeremiah Love of Notre Dame might be the most gifted guy, but just not the most productive. I just think that it's very difficult for a guy, if Texas plays soundly, it's just hard for him to create on his own, even though he does it right there. So I've called him a weeble wobble, a punching Judy. You hit him, he bounces and pops right back up, right?
Yeah.
He puts a hand down, spins, and just keeps running. They list him at 5'11". I think he's 5'9" at best. He's about 218. And you just can't get him to the ground with a shoulder, with a hand. You better bring it, and you better gang tackle this guy.
Yes.
I mean, that linebacker, the Iowa State, this is Iowa State, right?
Yeah.
Their linebackers were terrible because they had a bunch of injuries. So that's the equivalent of like a walk-on, encountering him in the hole there. right? And it looked like it.
Tough deal for Iowa State. They also for some reason kept running like cover one and having Bo Frailer bail deep. I would not have done that. I would rather have had Frailer coming down.
I would have loaded the box because it was the worst game plan I've ever seen Heacock have. And I don't want to go off on a tangent, but Arizona State badly outcoached them in that game. And hat tip to them. They've done a hell of a job coaching and playing. They've maximized this team. But I think that there are some things Texas can do. So you mentioned GT counter as a staple. They like a lot of gap blocking. When they do run zone blocking, it's usually inside zone.
Yeah.
Except they don't double play side very often. They may mix it up and choose to do it against us. But again, they're trying to get blockers released on the second and third levels because they think Cam can take care of a free guy in the backfield. That's a huge credit to his talent. But I think Texas is a little better across the front than what they've experienced so far. And I think some of the things that they've been able to do one-on-one, I think they're going to find that some of those doors are shut.
So Scherf won, on our board. He suggested in the comments of this article, he was like, so should Texas just play the base 3-4? And I thought about it, and to me, that actually makes sense. I'm curious what you think. The reason that
it is like effectively a 5-2, like the two outside linebackers are walked up.
Yeah, maybe you let the Sam play out in space a little bit every now and then, so you can disguise. But because I think with Skattebo, the trick is if he gets loose in space and then it's like, hey, Makuba or Taft, you just clean it up. I don't feel great about that.
Well, let me offer a personnel solution. Run your nickel, and you play a lot of Jelani McDonald.
At nickel or safety?
He could play safety, and you could put Makuba at nickel, or you could put him at nickel, and he can be a powerful force close to the line of scrimmage, physically manhandling that receiver, trying to block him, and then he's a very reliable tackler, and he's a big, strong guy.
That might be the way to go. Either McDonald at nickel or an actual linebacker, because I think what you want to do is restrict space so it can't get going.
Yeah, he is a guy that, like all good running backs, if you can hit him early, hey man, if you can hit Emmitt Smith going laterally or in the backfield right when he gets the ball, he feels just like Joe running back. What's different is when that guy gets some movement and some space and there's a two-way go, suddenly you're in their waters. But all a scheme, and we're talking about the difference between scheme and personnel, Ian. All a scheme is a plan. And personnel, of course, is how you execute the talent. If you're going to do a mortgage, I've got the guy who's got the plan, and he's the right personnel for you. That's Gabe Winslow. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. Why is he the right personnel? Well, over 20 years in the industry, he's been on every side of this industry. He owned a title company for quite a while. He's got a law degree, for God's sake. He knows exactly how to run this, and he's operating at a little bit higher level than the average mortgage guy who just sort of is a quote rate monkey. And then what about the plan? Well, Gabe has got a plan at all phases of this process. He's not just a guy you get the mortgage with. He can oversee every part of this process and help you with the realtor, with title, with any part that is a little bit of a change up. He is that good. He's that talented. Give him a call and find out why so many people rave about the plan and the personnel when it comes to Gabe Winslow. 832-557-1095. You have any final words on the run game with Cam Skattebo and how Texas might approach stopping it?
No, my only hesitation with this game in general is, I have two hesitations. We'll get into the other one when we do defense. Is that the normal PK strategy of like rope-a-dope, we're just going to play sound and we're going to absorb your punches and you're not going to get us on the canvas and we're going to counter. The metaphor is getting strange, but just like we're just going to play basic bend, don't break, and we're not going to break. That against Clemson, that was kind of ideal, even though that ended up being a tough game on defense. I don't love it as much against Skattebo. I think if Arizona State can just, if you give them space where they can realistically alternate Levitt, Skattebo, that's exactly how they want this game to be played, and they can finish in the red zone.
Well, I want people to understand that with the injury to Tyson, there is not an Arizona State pass catcher who would not only make our too deep, but make Clemson's too deep. They just don't have the weapons. And it's a shame for that football team. But I've never seen a passing game more reliant on one dude. And then the second dude is Skattebo. So those other guys are literally just spacers, because the beauty of 11, the beauty of the spread is if you put a running back out, you put a receiver out who's receiver eligible, a man has to go follow him, right? That's the beauty of that. But he literally is just a jag. And, I think Texas would do well to press their advantages against their run game and shut it down and dare these guys to throw the ball. And I love Sam Levitt, but boy, he's got no weapons.
They're basically like a Texas high school offense. That's how all the Texas high school offenses, or almost all of them, run the spread now. But you'll still see a school where they hand it to they'll have like an amazing running back who gets the ball 20, 30 times a game. And it's the same deal as it was in the old days. They just, instead of having extra blockers, they have the spacers, and they throw a bubble screen now and then just to make sure you don't fall asleep. So yeah, unbalanced formations, quarterback runs, and all that stuff. You would think Texas will shut it down because it's so easy to know what you need to do to win this game.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think PK needs to think a little more expansively, and I think that's where the influence of other staff members can be helpful in that regard. Let's talk about how Arizona State.
Nansen. This is a great Nansen game.
Absolutely. Hazelton as well, who's going to be leaving us for a DC gig. Let's flip the field here. Texas ran the hell out of the ball against Clemson. And people tend to break down defense in terms of talent. And hey, there's a lot to the fact that defense is like, how big are you? How fast do you run? And how pissed off are you when you get there? That's a lot of defense. There's also a coordination element to defense, Ian. And Clemson, let's just say I said coming into that game, they're less than the sum of their parts. And then that game did nothing but affirm that, because they looked clueless against the outside zone. And their poor edges, particularly opposite TJ Parker, but including TJ Parker, they got mauled by our tackles. And you saw the incredible success Texas had running the ball. Texas wants to run the ball against Arizona State. I promise you. Arizona State, despite being undersized, despite not having elite talent on their defense, has been pretty good stopping the run, Ian. How the hell are they doing that?
Thanks, producer. They remind me a lot of one of those older Gary Patterson 4-2-5 teams where they will slant. They play a 4-down defense. And normally it used to be that slanting was the purview of 3-down teams. It's like, we don't have enough defensive linemen, so get however many we can find in a 3-down front, and then we'll just like slant and slide our way to gap erasure. The Arizona State does that, but from 4 down. They blitz like crazy, and then basically their front is just, they throw their front in the direction they think it needs to go, and then they clean up behind it with the safeties, which also means the quarterbacks are on islands most of the time because the safeties have too much else on their plate.
They'll also run beyond just slants, Ian, not uncommon in football, but they'll run what I call replacement games.
Yeah.
Meaning against a run, not against the pass. And a lot of these are run blitzes. They'll have a defensive end deliberately come down and around a tackle who slants outside, and they basically exchange gaps. But the offensive lineman gets befuddled and everything gets jammed up and confused. And you need quickness and you need real dedication to make that work. Arizona State doesn't have a starter on their defense over 300 pounds. Their two tackles inside go 285, 290. Their backups are the same. Their edges are small, 240-ish. Linebackers are small. Even their secondary is not big. They're small. They rely on quickness, slanting, games, moving around. As long as they're moving, they've got a chance. And what you'll often see when you watch them play, which is funny when you're scouting them, you'll see play side Arizona State guys on skates getting driven off the ball.
Yeah.
But a bunch of random bodies just show up and it's a 2-yard gain. And you're like, what the hell just happened? And you rewind it and you go, oh, they're slanting and playing replacement games. And that safety took off sprinting at the snap of the ball and suddenly showed up in a gap that you didn't expect him to be in.
Yeah, I just wrote about this for Inside Texas, and that's where Connor's pulling these gifts from, so everybody go check that out. But I will say in the article, I don't know how well I clarified, like, the temptation when you see this team is let's line up and just hammer them in the run game. And Texas, there will come a time in this game where Texas is going to want to do that. Maybe they start that from the get-go. But to really punish these teams, they want you to try to do that. That's what they're expecting. And maybe you can do it anyway, especially the way Texas runs the ball schematically. But you can really catch these teams if you hit like the fade one-on-one, or you get their safeties going the wrong way and hit them with misdirection and hit them backside.
Gunnar Helm.
God, that's a good point that also did not come up in the article. Isaiah Bond would feast in this game if he were healthy. I don't know if he will be. Probably wouldn't count on it.
You're going to see quite a bit of Texas basically run blocking hard one direction outside zone.
Yeah.
It's play action. Quay Ewers pulls it, and his eyes are this way. Gunnar Helm will be lined up on the side he's looking and then run opposite. And then Ewers will turn, flip, and throw it to him on the run. And you might see 30 yards of open space when he catches the ball.
Yeah.
Yes. Arizona State doesn't get sacks. They penetrate to disrupt. They're not gifted individual players in that they're going to whip you one-on-one and humiliate you. When they get a sack, it's sort of accidental or it's a coverage sack. They're blitzing to run blitz. They're blitzing to disrupt your running game. The other thing I would add, Ian, if a team is run blitzing quite a bit, and this is what started to affect Gary Patterson and how he had to rethink some things, and particularly starting to have anchors on his defensive line instead of just runners. Like Gary Patterson defensive tackles used to weigh 280.
Yeah, right.
And then he went to 330 real quick. One of these reasons, if you can run outside zone effectively and they're trying to bring guys and just guess correctly, outside zone, if your offensive line is sufficiently mature and experienced, they can pick up all those guesses. And all of a sudden, they're not gap sound. And suddenly, Jaden Blue is going for 60. So Texas has to be patient that sometimes it's going to look bad. It's just going to look ugly when we hand the ball off because they jumble everything up and they guess right. But we're going to put in some misdirection stuff, not only in the passing game, but the running game, that I think it's going to reveal some stuff about Arizona State that the Big 12 was not able to reveal.
Two things on that. Maybe a quick. The 11 personnel, we're going to have the slot receiver go across the formation so that your assignments get changed, and then we run outside zone while you're changing your assignments.
Yep.
Don't do that against Arizona State because they will auto blitz the motion. They'll be like, oh, you're going to run your slot that way. That means it's outside zone this way. We're going to blitz that way. And then it's not so great. Your point about how they want speed and disruption on the defensive line is really emblematic of that, is that their starting defensive ends are Prince Dorba, who was a blue chip recruit to Texas, and Clayton Smith, who was a 5-star edge recruit to Oklahoma. And what it turned out for both of those guys was that while they were fast and quick, they did not have the bend and the flexibility to actually become great edge rushers. They were just fast guys in defensive end looking frames. And that's how Arizona State uses them.
They also, Ian, go about 235, 240 each.
Yeah.
And you saw with Clemson, particularly the opposite from TJ Parker, they had that undersized edge that spent about half that game on his back looking up at the beautiful sky. He was physically outmatched because the problem, the Prince Dorbas of the world are much quicker, much faster, and twitchier than the offensive tackles across from them. So they'll run inside them. They'll use their quickness on them in space. When people try to do that to Kelvin Banks, they end up not only losing, but they get pinned, which is like the ultimate sin if you're playing edge. They get pinned. Cam Williams, not exactly the quickest guy. If he gets a hand on you, you're blocked because he's going to bring the rest of his body with that hand. And then all of a sudden you're turned and you ain't running through that guy. So that's the fundamental issue that Arizona State's going to have. You can play all the games you want on the line of scrimmage. At some point, Texas is going to be able to get one of those guys pinned on the edge, and it's not going to be great for the Sun Devils unless Xavier Alford just comes across the formation and makes an amazing tackle, which he does all the time.
He will do that from time to time.
Yes, he does.
I think this will be okay to share. I was asking, Drew Kelson had some kind of history with him in Houston. And so I asked him about it, and he said that Alford was on his 7-on-7 team that he was coaching at some point.
Oh, wow.
And he had to play him because some guy got hurt, and Alford was only a freshman. And so he put him in. And then the other guy got healthy, and Drew was like, guess what? You're a linebacker now.
Wow.
And then the kid's coach was like, hey, what got my starter playing linebacker. I want him playing safety, obviously. That's why I want him doing it. And Drew's like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, this 14-year-old just took your job.
It's over. He's not going to give it up. Now, it seems like maybe Alford has not necessarily improved from then till now as much as was expected. Like he's been at Texas and USC now before Arizona State. But I'll tell you, when they play him at deep safety, and if there's anything he does well, it's reading the run, getting downhill, and knocking people down.
Yeah, they've got a nickel who's really good at that as well. A very physical guy. He was the guy who blew up Rocco Becht and drew the targeting.
Simmons?
So that poor guy he's out for the first half. His replacement, this is why I'm talking about outside zone, Ian. There's a method to my madness. His replacement is a freshman.
Wow.
So you're going to have a 240-pound edge next to a nickel who doesn't have the physicality. Shamari Simmons is his name. The guy that's out. He's going to be lined up trying to play the edge as the nickel when Texas runs outside zone that direction. So it's going to be interesting for them about, are they going to have to over slant to compensate for that? And then what can we hit throwing or running the ball going the other way, right?
Did you watch Kenny Dillingham's presser with Sark by any chance, where they had like Judge Judy playing? And
no, I didn't. I just read their transcript.
Dillingham gave a lot of this upcoming loss is not going to define us type quotes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he's a fun young guy. He's much like you or me, where he has a great blend of humility and arrogance. From one bit to the next. 1 minute he's like, I didn't have all these great coaches. I had to Google everything to learn. And then the next minute he's talking about we don't know what we're doing half the time. We just try to do what we think is right, and we'll learn if it goes wrong, kind of quotes.
Well, I'll tell you what, the guy's done an amazing job at Arizona State.
He's great.
He has some talent, and he got a lot of mileage out of it. And does Dillingham coach the quarterbacks?
He might, because
all I can tell you is Sam Levitt is arguably the most improved player that I saw in college football from game one to now. He's a redshirt freshman who plays like a 6-year guy and doesn't turn it over. He makes the right decisions. Actually, a decent comp to him without the passing sophistication that develops over time is Cade Klubnik. Very similar physical type. And he moves in the pocket to advantage his ability to throw. He's got a plan when he moves in the pocket. He's not running around like a fool. Our helpful producer says Arroyo coaches the quarterbacks. Well, good job, Arroyo, because you did a good job.
Levitt was built his name a little bit for what he did with Bo Nix at Auburn. And then he got Bo Nix again at Oregon when Lanning hired him as his initial offensive coordinator.
You're talking about Arroyo?
I'm talking about Dillingham.
Oh, Dillingham. Yeah, sorry.
So his background is coaching quarterbacks. Maybe Arroyo doesn't in name, but I bet you Dillingham is still pretty involved.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bo Nix is a great add to this because he's another quarterback who uses his mobility to advantage his ability to get a clearer throw. And he's not running around like a madman, which he did at Auburn. But they tamed him at Oregon, and now he's playing damn well for the Broncos, surprisingly. So, yeah, there's a lot of value in a mobile quarterback who has a plan and is using his legs to extend the pocket, extend timing, and get someone open. That's my fear with PK, to circle back and call back and tie up this whole thing. He sees that, and I think he fears like, oh, could they get someone open if he extends time in the pocket enough? But I don't think that's the main concern. I think the main concern is shutting down Cam Skattebo. Sometimes the obvious plan is right in front of you.
My other fear for this game that I forgot to mention was Clemson did not, maybe I just missed it, but it didn't seem like they blitzed Texas very much. And they certainly did not blitz Texas effectively.
No.
And Quinn made what I controversially called the best play of the season, where he pump faked an over to get the safety that was supposed to defend the post. Quinn pumped him out away from the post and then immediately turned and quick fired a post to Golden wide open down the field. Their corner somehow got over there and almost made a play on the ball, but whatever. Great play by Quinn. Finally hits the post. Naturally, he had to be in Sundance mode on the move to hit it right. But one of the things that stands out about the play is that he had time and space in the pocket to execute that maneuver. And you go watch like Mac Jones at Alabama. A lot of the time when he was throwing double moves and just dropping bombs every other play at Alabama, pristine pockets. And I feel like Arizona State, other teams don't like to blitz Texas because of the screen game and the speed and whatever. I think Arizona State's going to say F it, and they're going to blitz.
I think they will blitz, but I think it'll be guys you're not. It's going to be an unexpected blitz. It's not going to be a bunch of extra men. I don't think it's going to be 8 guys. I think it's going to be a safety, a corner, a nickel. I think, there's things that you can learn from watching, say, Vanderbilt against us, where they blitzed the nickel and sped up the pocket quite a bit.
Yeah.
We didn't always have a great answer for that, but I think that they're going to do some of that. I don't think they're bringing 7 and saying F it. I think they're going to be systematic in how they blitz. The problem with any blitz, though, Ian, is blitzes are more effective if you have good pass rushers. Sounds simplistic, but that's the truth. The idea of blitzing often is to get your good pass rushers one-on-one matchups that they can win.
If Texas gets Oregon, that's where this will be a much bigger fear.
That's right. And so I think there's some real fear of extra man blitzes from Arizona State because the Texas O-line is going to block them up. Quinn's going to have a pocket, and you're going to have a bunch of one-on-one matchups down the field that they're not going to enjoy. So anyway, that's putting a wrap on it. We tried to explore 2 aspects of this matchup that we think are going to be vital. If you're an Arizona State Sun Devil fan, love to hear your opinion. We have a ton of respect for your team. We're just questioning whether they can level up to face one of the better teams in college football, albeit in a year where I don't think there is any dominant team. So
the Salt Lake City Monster just got dropped in the Pacific Ocean.
The what?
That was a reach. They're like, I was going for like a big fish, small pond kind of deal.
Oh, okay.
They've been swimming in Big 12 waters.
Got it.
And so I picked Salt Lake City.
Does Salt Lake have lobsters?
I said monster.
Oh, monster. Okay. I thought you said a lobster. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Well, a Sun Devil is a type of monster. And as the great Mike Leach said, we don't know what we're dealing with at the Sun Devil. We don't know what kind of powers that a Sun Devil can bring to bear when he was asked to handicap Pac-12 mascots. So for Ian,
it better not involve sand because there's not going to be enough of it in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yes, that is right. Ian, as good an analyst you are, as good a writer, and good a mind you are, closing out is not your strength. Let's let the closer handle the final innings, buddy. For Ian Boyd, there he does it again. For Ian Boyd, I, Paul Wadlington, saying, hope you enjoyed this deep dive.
Homer, please edit this.